Watch the video to the end to find out the current and breaking news about the Russian war in Ukraine. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video to be informed of the developments at the speed of light. Decision on military assistance from Bulgaria to Ukraine. Today, Bulgaria has launched a logistical operation to send military and military technical assistance to Ukraine. The Bulgarian Ministry of Defense announced this. The list of weapons and ammunition delivered to Ukraine is classified. Today, a logistical operation will begin, during which the aid approved by the National Assembly will be sent to Ukraine, Deputy Defense Minister Katerina Gromyakova said. The country's defense chief, Admiral Emil Eftimov, also did not explain what weapons Ukraine will receive to resist the Russian offensive. Learning about the consequences of hostilities in Ukraine based not only on the implemented tactics and equipment, but also on the material and technical support system, the state and capabilities of the defense industry in our country and around the world. Based on this, we offered certain weapons and equipment, said Admiral Emil Eftimov, the world's NATO and EU allies. Earlier, Bulgaria finally approved the agreement on the provision of military assistance to Ukraine. On January 16, it turned out that the Bulgarian parliament supported the agreement between Bulgaria and Ukraine on the supply of weapons, equipment, and ammunition. Last week, lawmakers voted to approve a list of weapons to be transported to Ukraine. The country's defense ministry announced that the list of aid to Ukraine includes pistols and some equipment. The Bulgarian Ministry of Defense also announced that the type and amount of military assistance were discussed with Ukraine. Bulgaria has also agreed to participate in UA, the EU's military training for Ukraine. Ukrainian military doctors are undergoing training in Bulgaria. Bulgaria wants to take on the role of decision-maker in the Russian-Ukrainian war. Bulgaria's new Prime Minister Kirill Petkov said that his government's view on the Ukraine-Russia crisis is fully in line with NATO and the European Union and would be glad to mediate on this issue. Petkov, who has been on duty in Bulgaria since the beginning of the week, met with NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg at the NATO headquarters in Brussels. Speaking at a joint press conference after the meeting, Petkov stressed that his government is approaching the alliance constructively and wants to positively advance the security of the Black Sea, and especially the Balkans. Asked whether Bulgaria would be willing to mediate in the Ukrainian crisis within the framework of its close relations with Russia, Petkov said, "We fully agree with NATO and the European Union on the issue of Ukraine. We are also open about this," he replied. "The only solution to any contribution we can make is diplomacy." Petkov noted that the natural border between Bulgaria and Romania is the only bridge over the Danube, while the second bridge, built as part of NATO's strategic infrastructure investments, can be used by both civilians and decoy. The Bulgarian Prime Minister pointed out that it would be appropriate to achieve the goal in this way by contributing 2% to the joint budget. Member countries contribute to NATO's common budget according to a cost-sharing formula based on gross domestic product. Stoltenberg also noted that Petkov's visit to NATO in the first days after taking over the post showed his commitment to the alliance, saying, "I am grateful for Bulgaria's various contributions, including ships, to the development of our common security in the strategic Black Sea, NATO patrols in the region and the region. I am also pleased with your recent investments in aircraft, naval patrol, and armored vehicles." Stoltenberg stressed that Bulgaria's participation in the NATO operation in Kosovo is aimed at ensuring stability in the Western Balkans. Stoltenberg said. He said that he and Petkov had discussed the situation in Ukraine and reiterated their calls to Russia to stop the tension. Russia is the fourth state that continues to act as decision-maker in the Ukrainian crisis and the policy they follow. While the war between Russia and Ukraine continues on the one hand, clashes are ongoing in various regions of Ukraine. After the military operation announced by Russian President Vladimir Putin on February 24, many Western countries and organizations imposed sanctions on the Kremlin. On the other hand, some countries chose to remain neutral and mediate in the war. Great Britain, Israel, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and one of India's leading newspapers, The Guardian's analysis, tried to mediate between Kyiv and the Kremlin, but this neutrality initiatives and/or the leaders of these countries to protect their commercial interests. One Turkey analysis written by Patrick Winter decried the war, noting that Turkey is trying to maintain a balance between the West and the East, but did not announce specific sanctions against Russia. It was also recalled that Turkey announced that it was actually implementing the Montreux Convention and warned the Black Sea coast and Western countries not to transit through the strait. The analysis defined President Tayyip Erdogan and Putin as leaders in their 60s who have been in power for decades and benefit from each other's goodwill. The article reminded that Turkey has strategic ties with Russia through the S-400 air defense systems, and this was echoed by the United States and NATO. In the tourism sector, it was noted that 5 million Russian citizens visit Turkey every year, and this constitutes an important source of income. It was announced that Russia is building the Akuyu nuclear power plant in Mersin, and the Russian gas giant Gazprom owns the Turkstream pipeline, which meets about half of Turkey's natural gas needs. In the analysis, it was commented that the Turkish right sees the strengthening of the country as a threat rather than the future of Europe. On the other hand, it was claimed that Turkey, which is a NATO member and is looking for American support, is probably not the honest mediator that Putin is looking for. To Israel on Saturday, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett first met with Putin, then with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. After the face-to-face meeting with Putin, Bennett called Zelensky, then went to Germany and contacted Prime Minister Olaf Scholz. On the other hand, Israel's refusal to respond to the call to send equipment to Ukraine in the name of neutrality also caused reactions. An analysis by The Guardian suggested that although Israel has promised to mediate decisively between Kyiv and Moscow, it has more reason to protect Russia. Therefore, Russia's failure to sign the agreement during the negotiations on reviving the Iran nuclear deal will be a great diplomatic achievement for Israel. Israel also needs Russia's continued presence in the region to carry out airstrikes on Iranian and allied positions in Syria. 3. UAE. The United Arab Emirates is also one of the countries that have decamped to ensure peace between the Kremlin and Kyiv. The United Arab Emirates, known for its close ties to Moscow and Russian oligarchs, has called on both countries to end the war. Anwar Gargash, the diplomatic advisor to Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, said that they want the crisis to be resolved around the table. Bin Zayed stressed in a telephone conversation with Putin last week that the Ukrainian crisis should be resolved peacefully. But a Guardian assessment suggested the UAE did not want Russia to damage its relations. It was noted that trade between the two countries has grown 10 times since 1997, reaching $5 billion last year, and 55% of trade between the Gulf and Moscow is carried out by the UAE. It turned out that about 80% of investments made in Russia belong to businessmen from the United Arab Emirates. For India, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi asked the Russian leader to contact Putin directly by phone with Zelensky on Monday. A Guardian review noted that India abstained in the vote on the condemnation of Russia at the UN General Assembly on March 2, arguing that the country's response to Russia was limited. Most of India's non-military nuclear technology and about 60% of its military equipment comes from Russia. On the other hand, the audit predicted that Modi also plans to take Russia out of China, but this is now a low probability. Many congratulatory messages have come from Turkey's mediation in the grain protection crisis in the war. Providing secure transportation of food grain from Ukraine, Turkey, Russia, Ukraine, and the United Nations and Turkey thanks to the deal he signed to host the United States, Britain, France, Italy and many countries, including President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. A message of congratulations and thanks to Tayyip Erdogan was published. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, while the United Nations, Turkey between Russia and Ukraine that provides a safe exit from the Ukrainian port of the grain products. In a statement on the agreement, the UN, the Republic of Turkey, Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine of exports via the Black Sea supports. The United States welcomes this agreement and thanks UN Secretary General Guterres and Turkish President Erdogan for their resolute diplomatic efforts to mediate the negotiations. The United States welcomes this step. John Kirby, the White House's National Security Council Strategic Communications Coordinator, told reporters at the White House. We would like to thank UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and Turkish President Erdogan for their diplomatic leadership in signing this agreement. We thank UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan for their efforts to alleviate the global food crisis, which they have inspired, stating that they are in favor of reaching an agreement on grain exports, which have been valid in Ukraine for months due to grain exports of Russia. Josep Borrell, the Office of the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Relations and Security Policy, stated that the EU supports the efforts of the UN and said, "We thank Turkey for its important role and support in brokering this agreement." British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said in a written statement, "It is very important to supply Ukrainian grain to the international food market. We thank Turkey and the UN Secretary-General for their efforts to reach this agreement." Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the following about the agreements signed in Istanbul: "To our Turkish partners, personally to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan for their contribution to the results achieved today. The corridor agreement signed in Istanbul is great news for the entire international community." Draghi made a written statement about the agreement signed in Istanbul. "The agreements signed by Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, and the United Nations in Istanbul are great news for the entire international community." Using his statement, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called the grain corridor agreement signed in Istanbul a great success and congratulated President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Turkey for their key role in preventing a global food crisis. The Kuwaiti Foreign Ministry said in a written statement that it welcomed the agreement. "This is a step that will increase food security, reduce grain supply shortages, and stop price increases," the statement said, noting that Turkey and the United Nations appreciated the efforts to sign the agreement. President of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus Ersin Tatar, "I sincerely congratulate all the architects of the agreement on the supply of Ukrainian grain to the world Sunday, especially the President of the motherland of Turkey, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan." He used his expression. The chairman of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mohammed, expressed his satisfaction with the grain corridor agreement signed in Istanbul. In a written statement, Mohammed expressed his satisfaction with the signing of the agreement covering the export of grain and agricultural products via the Black Sea under the auspices of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the UN Secretary-General. Antonio Guterres, Secretary-General of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development for East Africa, former Ethiopian Foreign Minister Workneh Gebehu, said he was looking forward to the rapid implementation of the agreement and congratulated all participants in the process. President of the Republic of South Africa Cyril Ramaphosa, at a press conference with Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara in Pretoria, stated that the dependence of African countries on Russia and Ukraine in grain should be seen correctly. According to a report published by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, many countries dependent on wheat in Russia and Ukraine are facing a food crisis and rising prices on the continent. The African country, which imported wheat worth $3.7 billion from Russia and $1.5 billion from Ukraine between 2018 and December 2020, imported almost half of its total imports from these two countries.